So welcome to our first mind wrap. We're going to discuss the difference between a parameter and a statistic. So let's start off by just defining what those two things are. So if we go to our next slide here, a parameter describes an entire population. The most common parameter that you probably can recognize is a census, like the U.S. Census Bureau. When we take information about an entire population of people, that is considered a parameter. A statistic is a number where that's calculated from a sample. So that's randomly selecting people from a population to give a survey to, or to participate in an experiment, anything like that. That is considered a statistic, and the statistics are used to make inferences about our population parameter. So if we want to know if a certain drug affects a certain population, we would take a sample of that population and do an experiment with them to determine that and make the inference back to the population that it does or does not have an effect. So to determine if data is a parameter or a statistic, we kind of want to look at a couple questions. The first one we want to ask ourselves is the fact about the whole population. So are we talking about the entire population or just a portion of it? So for example, a parameter could be 10% of U.S. senators voted for a particular measure, because we're not talking about a sample of U.S. senators, we're talking about all the U.S. senators. That is considered a population, which would be a parameter. Or 40% of 1,211 students at a particular elementary school got below a 3 on a standardized test. Since we are looking at every student at that particular elementary school that took that standardized test, that would be considered a parameter as well. The second thing is ask yourself, is the fact about a sample from the population. Would it be possible to survey the entire population? One of the key things when you're talking about parameter versus sample is if you look at the wording of the question, typically it will tell you exactly what you're looking for, whether you're looking at a parameter or statistic. A lot of times you'll see things like a portion of the population, or they'll say a sample of something, or just the idea that you cannot, without being very cumbersome, actually take the view or survey the entire population. So for example, a statistic would be 60% of U.S. residents agree that with that latest healthcare proposal. You're not going to survey every U.S. resident to determine if they agree. You're going to survey a sample of them. So even though it doesn't say it's a sample, we infer that it is a sample because of the fact that you really cannot survey the entire population to get this information. 40% of all Jacksonville residents reported that they have been to at least one Jaguars game. Again, Jacksonville, Florida is a very big city, and so surveying all of the residents is probably not a feasible task, so you survey a sample of them to determine this statistic. Alright, one thing I really want you to understand about parameter and statistic is they can change based off of what population you are looking at. So for example, I could say I want to know the number of text messages sent a day by students who attend Navarro College. Well, now Navarro College is my population. But maybe to get that information, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at just the students taking general psychology at Navarro College, and I want to look at how many times those students send a text message every day, and then I want to be able to infer that back to Navarro College students in general. But again, my parameter and my statistic can change based off of my population. So let's look at the same basic question, but this time I want the number of text messages sent a day by students who attend a college in the U.S. So now my population is any student who attends any type of college in the United States. That becomes my parameter. And then if I take a sample, my sample now could be the number of text messages sent a day by students who attend Navarro College. So now Navarro College becomes my sample because my population is all students attending college in the US. So again, we have to be really, really careful between parameter and statistic and really understand the difference between a population and a sample and being able to identify those two things in regards to each other, because they can change based on the question you're asking. So now just a few practice questions. I'm going to give you a couple seconds after each one to figure out the answer for yourself, and then I will provide that for you. So for each example, we're going to determine if it is a parameter or a statistic. So our very first one says, of all U.S. kindergarten teachers, 32% say that knowing the alphabet is an essential skill. So hopefully you're thinking that this is a parameter. That is correct. Since we are talking about all U.S. kindergarten teachers, then that's a population. Therefore, the information that they provide is a parameter. Of the 800 U.S. kindergarten teachers polled, 34% say that knowing the alphabet is an essential skill. I'm going to give you just a second to figure that one out. Hopefully you are staying statistic, and this is a statistic because we are only looking at 800 of the U.S. Kindergarten teachers, so we're not looking at all of them. Notice that it very specifically says out of the 800 U.S. kindergartners polled, or teachers polled, excuse me. So our next one is a recent survey by the alumni of a major university indicated that the average salary of 10,000 of its 300,000 graduates was $125,000. So again, hopefully you're saying that this is a statistic. Since we did not survey or all 300,000 graduates, they only surveyed 10,000 of them, then that becomes the population, the 10,000. Excuse me, I apologize. The population is the 300,000 graduates, and my sample becomes the 10,000 that we surveyed, therefore making this a statistic since it's not about the entire population. And the last one, the average salary of all assembly line employees at a certain car manufacturer is $33,000. So again, we are talking about all assembly line employees, therefore this is going to be a parameter. I hope that this helped you understand the difference between parameter and statistic. If you have any further questions or would like any additional examples, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.